Hey everyone, it's Karen. I wanted to show you my top 10 books for this entire year. So coming in at number 10 is The Nickel Boys, which is essentially a story of this boy who is just on the straight and narrow. Like he is such a hardworking kid, such a good student, all this stuff, and he's in the wrong place at the wrong time and gets sent to like a reform school. Essentially it is basically like a place to be tortured, and what's heartbreaking about this book is that it's actually based on like a real school that was in Florida. So this book kind of goes back and forth in time, just telling about his experience at the school, and then it goes to the future too, when the main character is older. So yeah, super super good. I definitely liked this better than any other books by Colson Whitehead. Next, another historical fiction, I guess, which is The Time in Between by Maria Duenas. Duenas. I can't speak Spanish very well. Actually, for the women, what is it? Reading Women Challenge. If there is a category for a book in translation, this would be a good one to pick because I believe she is Spanish. But this is basically about a young adult woman during World War II, and it's just like her whole journey through the war. And what's really interesting is at one point in it, she is like a really talented dressmaker, so she begins to use her stitches to send messages during the war. Super super good, very long but very engaging. Next, we have a bit of a thriller, and that is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This is the first Riley Sager book I ever read, and it was so good. Basically, this girl, when she was a young girl, basically, she lived in this haunted house for a very brief time. She grows up, her parents die, and she finds out that they actually still owned that house, even though they moved from it like years and years and years ago. So as an adult, she's like an interior designer or something, and she inherits this house, and so she's like, Psh, I'm not scared of ghosts. This is like ridiculous. Like basically, her dad wrote books about this house, and like the house just became super super famous, and she basically thought her dad was just trying to make money, that it was all fake. And so she decides that she's going to go renovate the house, flip it, and make a ton of money. And yeah, so then you get to see, are there really ghosts, or was she right that it was all a myth? Next, I have two kid books coming up, and it's The Parker Inheritance, which is by Varian Johnson. This book I loved so so much for so many different reasons. Like it's a great book for lots and lots of discussions that you can have with kids. There's issues of race in here. There's issues of gender norms and sexuality and all that sort of stuff. Basically, the main character, Candace, moves to this town where her grandma used to live. And her grandma was like on, I don't know, in charge of the city or something. I forgot what her exact job was. But basically, her grandma gets this letter, and she follows all these clues to solve this mystery and decides that the mystery is going to be underneath these tennis courts. So in the middle of the night, her grandma digs up the tennis courts. Of course, everyone is like laughing at her and thinking she's crazy because there's no buried treasure under tennis courts, but also like she's a grown woman and she just cost the city a ton of money by tearing apart these like perfectly good tennis courts. So Candace and her mom come back to town after her grandma has passed away, and they're kind of just like staying at the house for a little bit while their home is being renovated. And yeah, then Candace finds this logic puzzle book in her grandma's attic, and inside of it is the original letter that her grandma got with like the clues to solve this mystery and all this stuff. So Candace and her friend decide to try and solve the mystery over the summer. And the book goes back and forth through time, which is, I don't know if you can see it. Some of the pages are a darker color, and that is a really good signal for middle grade readers that, hey, just so you know, we're going back in time. There's so many like historical sort of things that this talks about. And it's really educational and really engaging because it's like a mystery. Then Wonderstruck, which I just read recently. This is a beast of a book, but goes by really quickly because it is kind of a hybrid, like novel and movie, in my opinion. It is kind of like a graphic novel, but there's like pages that are only pictures, and then there are pages that are only words. So I feel like it's more of a hybrid. But basically, it is the story of this boy, and his parents die, so he ends up moving in with his cousins, which is just like a really bad situation because he has just lost his parents, and now he has to live with this family that didn't really expect him to live with them. And, it's just like a really bad situation, whatever. He takes off trying to find who his real dad was because he found this note that was written by his dad, and ends up at a museum where he thinks his dad works. Also, I should say that this boy, when the story started, was deaf in one ear, but gets hit by lightning and now is deaf in both his ears. And because it's kind of a sudden deafness, he hasn't really like had time to learn sign language and stuff like that. So he's alone in a big city in a museum without like a super good way to communicate. So he ends up writing notes to a bunch of the characters. And then at the same time, well, not at the same time, but as the story is being told, there's another story that is told through the pictures. And that is back in the early 1900s with this other deaf girl. Basically, her dad doesn't want her to leave the house because he's scared that she'll get into trouble because she is deaf, and he's scared that like she'll be taken advantage of or she'll get hit by a bus that she won't hear or whatever. And so it's kind of like a parallel story, but in different time periods. And of course, in the end, the stories come together, and it is so beautiful, and I loved it so, so much. So whether you're a kid or an adult, you should read this. Then I have The Light Between Us by Laura Lynn Jackson. It is about her life as a psychic and about the testing that she had to go through in order to like be for sure a psychic so that she could help lots of different people with her abilities. And I found it super interesting and super insightful about like her perspective on what happens after we die, why are we here, all those sort of questions. And then this book was so intense. I don't even know what number I'm at now. This is number 4. So my 4th book is If You Tell by Greg Olson. This book was very, very intense about this woman. Well, it starts off with this couple. They just got married. The woman finds out her husband is much, much older than he said he was. And then they get a call from his ex-wife, who I don't even know if she knew about, saying like, are you going to pick up the damn kids or something like that? And she didn't even know her new husband had kids. So they pick up 2 out of the 3 kids and they come to live with them. The boy does not talk at all, and the little girl does all the talking for her brother. She's very, very controlling, very manipulative, and as she gets older, she starts to put glass in people's shoes and do other like things to harm people on purpose. The family later takes in the youngest brother too, so now there's 3 kids, and yeah, basically the youngest is just kind of a feral child because his birth mom was just like a hot mess, alcoholic, all that sort of stuff. And so these 3 kids just had kind of a bad environment to start off life with. And now this new couple is trying to like, raise them correctly and stuff like that. But it's just so difficult because this girl is just so malicious. And then the girl becomes an adult, and it's about what she's like as a mother, which is horrible, disgusting, and the most graphic book I've ever read in my entire life, I think. It is a true crime book. So yeah, lots of bad stuff happens. And at number 3 is Being Human by Judith Heumann. She is an amazing woman that I knew nothing about. If you have watched Crip Camp on Netflix, She was in that, and it's just her life as someone who had polio as a kid, and just like how she lived with polio and kind of like grew up in a world that was not designed for her, in which there wasn't universal design, so it was very hard for her to physically get around the world, and just how she navigated that and how she advocated for things to change. She was such a fierce woman, and it was so amazing just to hear about her strengths and all the things that we have in place now because of her influence. All right, you guys, we're at number 2. So number 2 is This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. This book was hilarious. It is his story of being a doctor. I think he's a gynecologist eventually, but it's kind of like the beginning of his journey being a doctor. And he says right in the beginning that he is no longer a doctor, and he is like, sorry for the spoiler or something, but you knew the Titanic was going to sink and you still watched that movie. So he's just like so funny throughout it. There's a lot of serious stuff he talks about, and like a lot of things that you could discuss with this book, but he does it in such a way that you are like laughing even when it is like such a sad situation that has happened to someone. And number 1, are you guys ready? 11/22/63 by Stephen King. I loved this book so much. It tells the story of this teacher who makes friends with this guy who owns the diner next, like, I guess it's not next door, but I picture it in my head as next door to the school. And the guy who works at, or who owns the diner, tells the teacher to come over, whatever. And when the teacher sees the diner dude, like, he looks a hot mess. He looks like he has aged so much. He looks like he's gonna die. And like, the teacher just saw him the day before and he looked completely fine. So this is all very weird. The diner dude tells him essentially that he is dying, he has cancer, and he wants to show him some stuff before he dies. So he leads them into the pantry of this diner, and basically if you like shuffle your feet in the diner, in the pantry, it will take you down a staircase and automatically you are in 1958. And so it was just so amazing to hear what it was like in 1958, just all the sensory experiences of him like getting soda, and he talks about how fresh everything is because we're used to, like, you know, all the preservatives and all the fake food that is around these days. And yeah, so basically the guy at the diner tells him he wants to go back in time and stay back in time until 1963 when he can save JFK from being assassinated. And it raises so many questions about like time and like what would happen if we went back in time and changed something, and just the, you know, implications that that has, and about like why do bad things happen to good people and all those sort of things. I loved it so much. So yeah, I am enjoying everyone's videos so much for your top 10 of the year, or your top whatever books of the year. If you don't have a channel, I'm curious what you would consider some of your top books, so put them in the comments. And if you do have a channel, I would love to see your videos too on what you considered the top books of the entire year. I am excited to hear from you guys, and I will talk to you later. Bye.